Is she there? Over to you, madam.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Actually,
you.
what I'm trying to say is that basically, La Plage Metaverse is preparing you who have come for these different courses. The courses are all geared towards your professional development. And I'm saying that the bigger picture of this professional development, professional development is landing you in a place, in a workplace that is novel. A workplace that is novel. Why is that workplace novel? The workplace is novel because it's not as if where you are coming from is educated. But with the professional development that La Plage courses are getting you into, you are going to be a caregiver in an international workplace. You are going through entrepreneurial development with the aim of landing a big job outside Nigeria, outside the place where you have been communicating perfectly well. But at the end of the day, with the certificates you're now getting that I said are keyed towards your professional development, these certificates, if you do them, are helping you to shape up, because you understand already that in this knowledge economy, you either shape up or you ship out. Shape up or you ship out. Shape up by acquiring the soft skills that you need. And I'm saying that communication is key. In fact, you can get every other thing. You can get all the, you can assemble all your arsenal, but it is communication that will make your arsenal victorious. I'm saying that when you get the professional development via the different certificates you're now getting into your kitty, bear in mind that you are going to find yourself in an international workplace where you will find different people with their different cultural values. And that we are telling you that when you get there, you need to be competent at the cross-cultural communication level, so that you don't, by the way you communicate, exhibiting lack of cross-cultural communication competence. If you do that, you're not going to succeed, because you're likely, through your lack of cross-cultural communication competence, you're likely to cause a lot of misunderstanding in the workplace. You're going to cause disharmony in the workplace, which is not, I'm sure, which is not your aim. Your aim is to be able to find yourself in an international workplace, and that you move along. You move along, that the rapport at that workplace is very cordial. How do you get to that? It requires that you now start to adapt to your new cultural environment by, first of all, making sure you overcome your initial cultural shock, that you embrace the new way of communicating, not at the national level, not at the local level, but at the level where you have a mixture of human beings who are bringing to the table their cultural diversity. That you are able, through the courses we've been exposing you to, and also through this lecture, that you will be able to go along harmoniously, just like the tongue cooperates with the teeth. That's what we expect from you, that when you get there, you will know the limit of what the workplace tolerates, and that you steer via media, that you embrace the other. When I say the other, that's those around you. Those around you have their inborn norms and values. You also, going to that new place, you also have yours. Yours may be shocking to them if you expose them without prior knowledge that this is how people from this other culture look at people from my culture. If you do that, you will be maintaining peace rather than being a source of worry for those who engaged you. I don't know whether I've made any point. I don't know whether I've answered your question.
Excellent one. Excellent. You've done justice to that. And I think it has further added momentum to whatever has been going on. I can see comments from the comment section. They are quite encouraging. Thank you, ma'am, for this insightful and educative presentation. Catherine O. Nelly, very nice teaching experience. Thanks, Prof. Victor Obi. This is an eye-opener for some of us. Thanks, Subay Adeyemi. Good evening, everyone. Okay, join from Gokana Bodo Christian. Where is that? Okay, preparing everyone to adapt to and accepting cultural differences, cross-cultural, communal, national, international boundaries, blah, blah, blah. And then, okay, the future of work, Dr. Ihot Achu, okay. Excellent presentation, Hadiza, a very great teaching, Ma. So it's been able to communicate outside your community, okay? I recommend to my colleagues to read books on linguistics and culture of places to work. Good. Thank you, Ma, for the wonderful presentation. Thank you, Professor Mbani, for eloquent apt and passing the content to meet the layman. Great lioness is a privilege to listen to you always. Benedicta Domibe Indica. Thank you, Professor. It's quite educated. So it's clear that we have made a lot of progress and everyone appreciates the fact that we have done justice to the topic at hand. Somebody said awesome, 100%. So thank you, Professor. I want to just take one more question, then we'll move on to Professor Egusi. I hope he's still available. You know, professors are big men and big women, so we don't keep them too late up. So let's take one more question from, there's no woman here raising hands. Hassan, Miriam. I think Miriam should be. Let's take from Miriam. Hassan, Miriam. Are you there? Hassan, Miriam. Okay, if Hassan Miriam is not there, let's move on to Jefta Uso. Unmute yourself, please.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Yeah, I'm so much happy about the topic, and I want to ask a question on the experience. Okay. You know, talking about the pre-knowledge of the cultural interface in this issue, I had a challenge that where I had to venture in. I understood the culture and everything and the ethics, but I believe at times personal interests do interface in this issue. At times, you know, people come to do, for example, you are in a workplace and you want everything to move smoothly, and then you come to find out that people are bringing eye service, and then this is also distorting and bringing down the equation equality in the company. But you trying to work to make sure that the profit margin is high, you are now bringing issues to the people. In such case, how can we go about it? Because you see that you are very well, communicating very well, respectfully, honorably, despite the diverse cultural ethics, you understand the norms and everything. In such place, please, Prof, I want to get a more insight, because I don't want to hurt somebody and I don't want somebody to hurt me. So I want to, because I know that this very same challenge, a lot of people are having it. You're working very well, then some people are like feeling you are doing much more as not to be expected. You understand? Bringing profits to the organization. So in such case, how do we manage it?
Over to you, Professor.
Thank you. My advice to you is to know your team.
Okay.
Know your team.
Okay.
Know your team.
Yeah.
If you don't know your team, you may be in an island, and you may score yourself 100%, whereas you are just performing at 40% level. Know your team, know their likes and dislikes, and we are zeroing on communication, sending message across to members of your team in such a way that your message resonates with a peace-loving mindset.
Yes. Yes.
You don't talk down on people.
Yes.
You make your point very well, but you also know I want you to go the extra mile of acquiring what I call emotional intelligence.
Correct. Yes, yes.
You say you are communicating well, but what tells you? What tells you that you're communicating well?
Okay.
If you're self-centered, if you see every argument from your own perspective alone, if you don't give room for the opinion of the other people in your team, because we're talking about the international workplace. The international workplace, there, individuals melt into the company overall picture.
Yeah.
We don't want to know about who is Mr. Udo. We don't want to know about who is Ekaite, who is Oluwatoyin, who is Chinenye, who is Chijioke. We just want to know that in company XYZ, all the Chinenyes, all the Emekas, all the Oluwatoyins, they are just presenting a unique picture that resonates perfectly with the vision and mission of the company they are representing. How do they achieve that? By weeding. Have you got a farm? Do you allow grass to overgrow the crops? You don't allow the crops to be overcome by weeds. What are those weeds? What are those weeds in a communication environment?
Yeah.
Things that will cause breach. You weed them aside, you keep them aside, you purge yourself of your cultural biases. Who knows? You find yourself in UNESCO tomorrow. I overheard a friend in the 70s that had a job there, and the person said the motto there is meet the world.
Meet the world.
Meet the world. Okay, and the world, of course, is a basket of people from diverse cultures. Come down to communication, send your message in such a way that it takes care of overall learning. Have I done this to your question?
Excellent.
Wow.
I said I was.
Wow.
I said I was.
I am so happy. I am so happy.
Yes, I said I wasn't going to be academic. I was trying to be clinical. Clinical, that is breaking it down. Yes. Small.
You have done exactly that, man. You have done exactly that. And we've all learned so much. From the comment section, I can see that if we ask people to, I have to copy some out. Nice one. Team is giving consideration. Somebody said this response is wow, very informative. Wow, man, I love the way you explain your ideologies. Thank you. I'm just joining. Somebody said I joined very late, but from the little I've gotten, I've learned so much. And someone just said I thought I knew so much. I never knew that I have so much to learn. So, madam, you've done a mountain of justice to these issues at hand. And honestly, it's one major area that we Africans, let me say Africans, have issues with. But because you might not readily find a place to go and learn some of these things. And that's why I'm bringing them up. And we thank God we have someone like you around to teach us some of these things. Once again, I want to say thank you very much. I want to say I appreciate you. Isua Dimas, please, we are not happy with your position and the fact that you are not sitting like someone in a classroom. Yes, I might have to start calling names. So thank you, Madam Professor Mbalefo. We are moving on to the next speaker. I want to believe he's still here, patiently waiting for us because he's a big man. He's also a professor. And,
thank you.
Thank you, Madam. We appreciate you. God bless you.
Thank you, my student, my teacher now.
Thank you. Well, for those of you here, anybody that we have the opportunity of joining the alumni, we'll be inviting all these academic heavyweights to come and groom us to become international figures that can fit in anywhere in the world. It's just a matter of time. Join the Alumni Association and you have the opportunity. Okay, let's move on to the next speaker, Professor Igwisi. I know he might not want to spend more than 10 minutes, but we'll beg him to spend up to 15 minutes. Then we'll ask him a few questions. He has been doing so much justice to us. We have a lot of his videos. And if you had listened to, if you go to YouTube and watch any of his previous sessions with us, you will be like, wow. So over to you, Professor. Just 10, 15 minutes so that we don't keep you waiting. And we'll ask one or two questions and we'll call it a day. Over to you, sir.
Good evening, all.
Good evening, sir.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm not able to get my video working, but I will just tell you what I need to tell you, and maybe in the course of our presentation, the video can come on. We are looking at disaster risk reduction. Now, the issue is why disaster risk reduction? Disaster risk reduction in the sense that we don't want our communities to be destroyed by disasters. What is a disaster? Let me start from the basic. Because disaster, like we know, it's when a hazard impacts on a community, overwhelms that community, and the community doesn't have sufficient capacity to solve that problem, for which the community or the country or the state has to bring in support from outside of the community. Do we have examples of such disasters? Yes. For example, in 2020, there was this COVID-19. That was a pandemic that went across the entire globe, affected all nations. and of course affected economic flows. Lives were lost, livelihood were lost, and all of that. We also remember the Ebola. There was before the COVID-19, there was the Ebola. That one was another that in itself was an epidemic because it was restricted in a way. We also remember the recent fire disaster in United States of America, specifically in California, how houses were destroyed, how parks were destroyed, how vehicles, properties were destroyed, and lives were lost. We also remember very well in the immediate past, 2012, when that popular flood that happened in Nigeria, and it was very devastating to the extent that about 28 out of 36 states in Nigeria were affected. A large amount of part of the economy was lost, and lives were lost, and all of that. So that's what we call a disaster. Now, how does it happen? It happens in the sense that you have a hazard. A hazard is the hamburger of the disaster, is the cause of the disaster. And when you have a disaster impacting on a vulnerable community, and the community, like I said earlier, does not have sufficient capacity to cope with that impact, then of course you have a major disaster in your hands. So when you are interested in reducing disaster risk, then we should be able to know the hazard in our community. That's to say, we should be able to do a hazard profiling, hazard characterization. In other words, the sort of thing we teach students here is that we do what is called hazard risk assessment. And we should also be able to do a vulnerability assessment. How vulnerable are the communities, the people, the state, the local government area, or the entire country? And of course, we also want to look at the capacity. When we're talking about capacity, we are looking at things like the assets. What assets do they have to cope? We're talking about coping. What are the resources they have? I will talk a little bit about all of that later. And so if we are interested in reducing disaster risk, then we should be able to provide the hazard. We should be able to reduce the vulnerability of the people, households, communities, and all of that, and improve the coping capacity, or the capacity to withstand the problem. Now, the issue now is when you have such a problem at hand, how do you go about it? Now, you can go about it in several ways. Classically, one of the things we teach students here is that you have what is called a prevention approach. You can prevent the hazard from impacting on the community. That's prevention method. There are several programs that you can run out to do prevention. For example, you can talk about public enlightenment, and so on and so forth, so that people will be aware. You can also have what is called mitigation. You can roll out a set of programs for mitigating the hazard, so that the hazard does not impact on the community. Now, when you're talking about mitigation, you're talking about how to reduce it. This can be, structurally, using building structures, or non-structural mitigation approaches. By non-structural mitigation, we're talking about things like legislation, law, don't do this, and all of that. Then, of course, you have to have preparedness. Now, all of these things, the prevention, the mitigation, and the preparedness are in what we call disaster risk reduction. Now, these are the things you do in the community. Then things that you are supposed to do Now, this would include things like, search and rehabilitation. Now, risk management, disaster management, disaster risk management has two major sections. You have the disaster risk reduction part of the disaster. The things you do after the disaster activities. Now, more or less trying to prevent the disaster from occurring. And we call the whole of those activities under DRR as things like, we call it something like prevention is better than cure in a layman's language. That's to say, if we're able to prevent all these things from happening, we don't have to carry relief materials to the people. We don't have to activate emergency response. We don't have to carry ambulances, search and rescue to the scene of the incident, of the disaster. So it's another way we call it a stitch in time saves 9. To put in a language we all understand, a stitch in time saves 9. So you discover that when you do all of these things, you are able to prevent a disaster from occurring. And another way of looking at DRR is, you call it prepared today and be safe tomorrow. Prepared today and be safe tomorrow. When you say you are prepared today, what does that mean? You are doing everything you can to prevent the hazard from impacting on the community. You are doing everything possible to mitigate the impact of the hazard on the community. You are doing everything possible to be prepared. And so when you're able to do all of these things, then you are safe tomorrow. Which means when the hazard impacts on the community, it will have very minimal, very little effect, very low effect on the community. There won't be loss of lives, there won't be loss of properties, the economy will not be disrupted, and the society can go on smoothly as if nothing happened. So that's why we say you prepare today and you are safe tomorrow. That's what disaster risk reduction will do for you. And that's why we also call it prevention is better than cure. That cure is a response phase. These are the post-disaster activities you need to do. We can avoid all of that. Those aspects can be averted. We don't have to be carrying domain and blankets and all of that to victims. No, we can actually avoid all of that if we do prevention adequately. Now, let me tell you a little bit about this issue of preparedness. One of the programs or activities we can do under preparedness is that we can develop an early warning system. What early warning system does is that it gives the people some idea about what is going to happen in their community, in their country. You have an idea that a hazard is going to impact on the community. And so the people are able to organize themselves and get out of harm's way before the hazard impacts on the community. And so when the disaster occurs, there'll be minimal damage to the community and less loss of lives. Besides that, we can also have what is called simulation exercises, part of that preparedness, training, stocking of vital items, like non-food items, food items in the store. We can procure those things. It's not when the disaster occurs before you start looking for medication and food. It will be too late. In that case, it's like it's no more emergency. You can imagine the time it will take to make requisition, and go to the market to buy materials. It will be late. So what happens is that you should be able to procure all of those things and put in a safe place so that when the inevitable happens, you deploy these materials. So that's part of the things that we can do. And we can do simulation exercises, training, and all of that. So now let me give you some of the importance. Why do we have to do disaster risk reduction? What's the relevance? Why do I need to study disaster risk reduction? Like I said, it's an aspect of disaster risk management. Why do I have to do it? There are, for very obvious reasons. Now, one of the reasons we do that is that if we know how to do the disaster risk reduction, like I said, if we do it well, we will be saving lives and reduce injuries. Life is precious. In disaster management, we don't even put cost, we don't put money on lives lost for ethical reasons. Life is precious. So if we do our disaster risk reduction well, we will be saving lives and reducing injuries. So these are proactive measures that we can do that will enable us save lives and reduce injuries. Now, a second reason why I need to study disaster risk reduction is that it helps me to find out how to protect livelihoods and assets. Because during a disaster, a lot of damage is done. Damage and losses. In fact, that's a thematic area in disaster risk management. Damage and loss assessment. A lot of damage is done. A lot of losses is incurred by the community, the country, the region, and all of that. So we can actually avoid all of that if we know what to do under disaster risk reduction. Now, we can also minimize economic losses. Like I said, for example, in 2012, the flood disaster that happened in Nigeria in 2012, like I said earlier, the loss from that disaster was colossal. Nigeria lost about 10% of its GDP. And at that time, the GDP of Nigeria was almost about 500 billion US dollars. About 10% of that was eroded. So we can actually prevent all of that from happening if we do our disaster risk reduction well and effectively. So we can also strengthen community resilience by doing disaster risk reduction. We can do that. And how do we do that? We do that by doing a baseline survey. I have done quite a number of these over the years in several parts of this country. I don't need to mention it. For those who know me, they know what I'm talking about. You do a baseline survey. From the baseline survey, you have an idea about the nature of the hazards that are implicated in this problem. You know the nature of the vulnerability of the people, and you know the nature of the capacity of the people. And when you work on this assessment, then you should be able to make recommendations that will help. If you implement those recommendations, then you will be on the pathway of building resilience in those communities. And so when the next episode of disaster happens, those communities that you have implemented those programs on will be more resilient, and they will stand. And we can also reduce dependence on emergency management. Like I said, if we do disaster risk reduction well, you don't have to transit to the phase of emergency management. You don't have to transit to post-disaster management activities. The post-disaster management activities are the emergency phase, where you go for rescue, search and rescues. You are rescuing lives. After that, you go into recovery phase. Then from recovery phase, you go into rebuilding the community, rehabilitating the people, and building back your roads, your bridges, your schools, your hospitals, and all the damages that were incurred. So you don't have to do all of that. or carry relief to people. You don't have to do that if we do our disaster risk reduction well. Now, it also enables us to promote sustainable development. Sustainable development in the sense that all the development gains, all the roads, the schools, the hospitals, the bridges, and all of that in the community can be destroyed in a single disaster. It can be destroyed. During the 2012 flood, I was privileged to go to Taraba State and Adamawa State, and I saw the level of destruction of properties in those states. Farmlands were lost, crops were still on the farm when that thing happened, schools were destroyed, clinics, hospitals were destroyed, bridges were washed away, roads were destroyed. And these are indices of development. You know, somebody will ask you to, what is this community developed or not? Is a measure of how much schools, hospitals, roads, and bridges that you have that determines the level of development. So when all those things are destroyed, of course, we are back to square one. So which means development is not sustainable if we continue on that track. Now, we also know that if we do disaster risk reduction, we are actually promoting or addressing climate change issues. Climate change issues, because when we do hazard profiling, hazard characterization, or hazard risk assessment, we are actually looking at climate change issues. In Nigeria, for example, the dominant disaster is flood. And of course, the cause of the flood is rain, ultimately, whether in the form of intensive rain or, river flooding, when a river overflows banks and impacts on the neighboring communities and all of that. So if we address those issues properly, we're actually also looking at climate change issues, and we're able to solve those problems. And the disaster risk reduction will also enable us, will also help us to improve governance and planning in our communities, in the local government, and in the state level, at the federal government level. Why? Because when we do this, it encourages the government people that prioritizes safety. Safety is the key. Preparedness. And sustainable development. Otherwise, you're going to be destroyed by disaster, you rebuild, it is destroyed by disaster, you rebuild. There will be no sustainable development. So the hard to build can be there for a long time to come, for generations to come. For next generation to build or to add on top. So that's a risk reduction. Like I said, it's sometimes when we look at this issue, for me, it's can be a little bit pathetic. Paid to this issue by various at the state level, at the local government level, or at the community level. Not much attention is paid to it, and it's very sad, And so that's why we have all these problems. Particularly this aspect of disaster risk reduction, which is an aspect of disaster risk management. I've said that earlier. Disaster risk reduction is the key. If we do it well, we're able to do a lot of prevention, mitigation, and preparedness. And if we do it well, we may be able to avert the occurrence, disaster incident. Now, the disaster risk reduction is not a glamorous thing. It's it's not the things that the media see. You are not carrying a trailer load of food items or medication and relief materials to people. No. Disaster risk reduction is a little bit academic. It's an academic thing, wherein you have to do assessment. Like I've been saying, one of the common things that I've been indulging my talk this evening is that it's assessment, hazard risk assessment, vulnerability assessment, capacity assessment. And there is one thing, there's a thematic area in disaster risk management we call VCA. That is vulnerability and capacity assessment. It's a major aspect of disaster risk reduction. If you are able to assess the hazard, the vulnerability, and the capacity of the community, of the people, then you will be able to find out how to solve that problem, and you implement programs and activities in those communities, and that will make the community to be resilient. It's an academic thing. And so, as I round up, I want to re-emphasize that the safety of life, properties, assets, livelihood is very, very important. And unless we do what is right, we may not be able to prevent loss of lives and properties. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Eguisi. As usual, I've made a promise that we'll create time for all our professors to run a very lengthy program with us, where they will have the opportunity to actually pour out all they know, as much as possible, to the students, and transform the students into world-class individuals. We are going to do that as soon as possible. Once again, I want to say thank you. I want to believe that all the topics treated here have made some impact on us, regardless of your background. That is the essence of this Zoom session. Give you a background knowledge of several other disciplines other than your current discipline. And it makes you a more international figure, more international minded person. And you can attest to the fact that you are already becoming that just these few hours we spent here. We are going to take questions from just two persons. We can make it, please just make it very brief so that we don't stay too long. Yes. Okay, Mustafa Kazim. What's your question, please? Okay, I don't think Mustafa Kazim is ready for any question. Doctor.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, good evening, sir. Thank you for the insightful lectures. My question goes that what are the effective ways of communicating with
Okay.
What are the effective way of communicating with the targeted vulnerable people, targeted disaster people in the community? I don't know, maybe you get my question, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you,
Dr. Kazim.
Dr. Kazim. The vulnerable people, one of the ways by which we get to them is through what we call the IEC materials. These are pamphlets, particularly in local. From my experience, if you develop pamphlets of do's and don'ts, what to do in case of flood, in case of fire, in the case of epidemics and stuff like that. If you develop those flyers or pamphlets and you develop them in the local language and you're able to pass them around, it goes a long way to communicate some of these things to you. Like earlier, I was talking earlier about an early warning system. The early warning system, it's a way by which you assess the hazard. You are able to know when the hazard will impact on the community, and you're able to put all of that information together and pass it on to the people. That's the communication aspect. Also use radio from some of the interventions, some Nigeria, I discovered that radio ways of communicating this into the people, because people have more access to radio. Well, in the northern part of Nigeria, particularly Sokoto, Katsina. I did a recent work in Sokoto, Katsina, and Zamfara. I discovered that radio was one of the key ways of communicating some of these to the people. Television too is also, in my experience in the field, the television is not so much of a priority. Maybe because of television these days, maybe issues about electricity, power, and all of that, you know. But the radio, since you can put your battery in a radio, these small transitions, that's one of the ways you communicate with people. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor. We appreciate that response. We'll take another one from Dr. Kefas Gemla Joseph. Kefas, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, sir. Good evening, sir.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's up?
Yes, I want to appreciate this insightful lecture.
Thank you.
I have like 3 questions here. As a prof mentioned, first of all, there's a place in Taraba, because me, I'm from Taraba. That always, whenever rain falls,
yes,
whenever rain falls heavily, there's this disaster of rain overflowed farms. A lot of farms, destroy a lot of farms. What are the solutions to this? Then secondly, what is the best way to accurately manage risk assessment? Then thirdly, what are the best ways to accurately prevent disaster risk reduction? Thank you, sir.
Okay. The first question is not very clear because the network was not very clear when you were saying it, but it's like you said something like rain on farms in Taraba State, and what's the solution?
Yes.
Okay. Rain on farms, that's a good one because the farmer will want rain in their farm. But when the rain now becomes too much and it overwhelms the rivers, and the river will now overflow its bank into communities, that becomes an issue. So what on those rivers, if system, that's the key. So the area you were talking about, I will carry some time ago, and not too long ago I was there. So that's one way. Number 2, risk assessment. When you're talking about hazard risk assessment, like I said earlier, you were talking about what is the type of hazard in that community. What is the source? What's the cause of that hazard? How frequent is that hazard? Does it exhibit some special dimension? That is to say, is it found in one particular area within the geographic region, or is spread across the whole place? Again, part of the assessment we do is that, does it exhibit temporal dimension? In other words, is it something that happens only in January, or it happens January, February, March? Like in case of flood, it's a rainy season thing, happening maybe between the months of June and September. And another thing we do in hazard risk assessment is each time it happens, what are the consequences? In other words, what is the magnitude of impact? How many lives are lost? How many properties are damaged? How many livelihoods are lost? And so on and so forth. So these are the things we look at, because it enables us to develop interventions, what to do to avert all this, the impact of the hazard on the community. And of course, I hope you know what a hazard is. A hazard is any phenomenon that has negative impact or has harmful impact on the community. That's a hazard. That's why issues like strong winds, flood, fire, earthquakes. We don't have incidents of earthquakes in Nigeria, and so on and so forth. That's what a hazard is.
Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay. The third question, sir. What are the best ways to accurately prevent disaster risk reduction?
Now, to your third question, you say, what's the you pick this? I said prevention is better than cure. Prepare today and you'll be safe tomorrow. Those are the popular. The best prevention method is to know your hazard. When you know the hazard, you know what to do. It's like when you go to the doctor, sure, he gives you a paper to go to the labologist. They take your blood sample, your urine sample, they do the analysis and give you a result to give to the doctor. The moment the doctor says, okay, I know what you mean. That is what hazard, you will know how to handle it. And two, what to do to save the people. By vulnerability, we mean how exposed the people are, how susceptible they are to that hazard. In terms of maybe proximal band, they are more vulnerable than people who build their houses on top of the hill.
Okay. I think we've lost Professor Egwisi there.
Yes, sir. The network is bad.
Okay. But so far, so good. He has done justice to this topic. While we wait for him to come up, thank you, Dr. Kefas. I want to believe your questions have been responded to.
Yes,
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. While we wait for him to come up, we said we are going to take just 2 questions, and we want to leave it at that so that we don't exceed our time unnecessarily. Want to say a very big thank you to Professor Egwisi. He has done justice to the topic at hand. We also want to say thank you to Professor Mbanefo. She did justice to her topic, communication, cross-cultural environment, communication in such environment. I also want to say thank you to Professor Seth Akusin, who is encouraging us to go into entrepreneurship. So you can see that we've cut across various disciplines, and there's no one that is not going to be useful to us. In fact, if for anything, to sharpen your skills and your ability to communicate effectively in any of these areas that come up in the course of your sojourn here on earth and your profession. Once again, I want to say thank you and God bless you all. Come to the end of this program. We'll try as much as possible to send the recordings of these programs to the class today or tomorrow. But if we cannot, we'll just make sure we do that, hoping that the technical hitches will not affect us. We'll do our best to do that. But if not, well, good and fine. We'll be having such wonderful sessions, even more robust sessions than this, that will culminate in maybe the diploma programs that we can use in furthering our professional progress. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, my name is Dr. Saze Joshua Obaseki-Oserige. I work with La Plage Metaverse. La Plage is out to ensure that you become better, you have alternatives from where you are coming from, you have other opportunities coming your way, and that you become better than what you were just yesterday night, and that by God's grace, you will have reason to smile. If you've not joined the Alumni Association, I encourage you to do that. It's going to be a place where you meet old friends, you network, you get jobs, you improve on your profession. A lot of things will be happening there. And we'll be inviting experts like this to come and talk to us. And there will be so much progress taking place there in a community. God bless you all, and see you some other time. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
so much.
Thank you so much.
Send us the link.
Nice one. Nice one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
God bless you.
Bye.
Very much. What is nice?
It was a pleasure.
So effort
Good
today.
morning.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you the more. Thank you. Bye bye.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Good night.
Yes, for the alumni,
Bless
for the
you.
alumni,
Can we join the alumni group?
yes, for the
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much for this class.
yes, for those of you that want to join the alumni, we'll be sending the links to your various classes, and we'll be sending you SMS. And if you're on the Facebook page, you will see a notification about it. Do so to join as soon as possible. Yeah, the membership registration is quite subsidized now. From March to be ×2 of what you are going to pay now. So it's an opportunity for you to join now if you want to join. Thank you. Stay blessed.